What's up, everybody? It's Jeffrey Lyles, welcoming you to another edition of Lyles Figure Files. We're into HasLab season right now. We're on Star Wars at this moment. We got G.I. Joe just around the corner. And a little bit further down the block, we've got Marvel Legends coming. There's a lot of money potentially coming out of our wallets. And I think because of that, we're seeing a little bit of a slowdown with the Star Wars Vintage Collection. Black Series fans like me are sitting in the corner pouting. When are we ever going to get another crack at a HasLab? But we're seeing, I think, the crush of HasLabs as it plays out with this Vintage Collection Moss Eisley Cantina. It's a really nice looking set. I think they put a lot of great detail into it. Check out the distressed walls, the paint work that's fading and chipped and all that great stuff. Do you think it still needs flooring? But whatever, I'll work around that. We got Woo-Her with his chest hair. He's saying no droids here. Got the Tonica sisters just chilling over on the side, seeing what they can see. And right now, this bad boy needs 8,000 backers to get funded, to go into production, get everything rolling. And as you see, it's a 6,065 backers with 11 days to go. That's a little bit surprising because it felt like previous HasLabs for Vintage Collection offerings had no problem getting funded, at least by that first week. By week 2, they were cruising. As we saw with last year's HasLab, the Ghost, it was simply a matter of there's still time. You can add Sabine and Chopper onto this project. It'll get funded because everything else has been funded. So, it's a little bit interesting that this hasn't at least hit that magic threshold of 8,000 backers. There's still a lot more tiers to accomplish with this thing. To fully fund it, it's going to require 17,000 backers. And I mentioned already, you get 3 figures with the base offering. No need to worry about anything. Woo-Her, the shotgun, he's chilling. And we got the Tonica sisters. They're at the side of the bar. And then it's going to take a little bit more to get all the way completed. Tier 1, Greedo, he's 11,000 backers. I feel pretty confident he's going to get backed and funded. Then we've got Neighboring Leads at 14,000. I'm a little less confident, but I feel once people start seeing him rolling, getting those backers, he'll probably reach that threshold. 17,000 backers will get us Ariel Schultz. And I feel like he's a unique enough character that momentum could and probably should carry him all the way through. But I'm surprised that we haven't gotten at least past 8,000, maybe into 10,000 by this point. Yeah, 11 days and 11 hours is still plenty of time to get all this funded. The price point isn't too crazy. HasLab speaking is $399 for the base, $499 for the deluxe version with a couple added sections. So that's whatever. But I don't think that's outrageous, especially considering some of the prices for previous HasLabs. And you can see there's lots of places to pack all your Cantina denizens in here. Got your droid detector, lots of fun stuff, great elements, and they packed a ton of detail into this thing. It looks cool. I'm really surprised it hasn't got it funded yet. And I was thinking, well, yeah, this is probably the first one that we've seen, at least on the Vintage Collection front, that's taking a little bit of time. But with 11 days to go, I just wanted to see how this was rolling compared to some of the other HasLabs from the past. And that brought me over to Brian Brink over at Geek Dad Life, who is doing amazing work, who is really helping out all of us content creators in terms of putting the hard numbers out there. This is Geek Dad Life. If you haven't checked it out, great resource. Brian does all kinds of tracking on the HasLabs just to get a sense of where it's going, how other projects have gone. I just want to pull up and see how this is looking compared to some of the others. So let's start off with the Marvel Legends project. So with that, we've got the Sentinel, we got Galactus, Ghost Rider, and we got Giant Man. And let me just run through those necessary backers. The Sentinel only needed 6,000 back in the day. Galactus needed the most we've seen for HasLab. They got really ambitious. Let's go with 14,000. They've since turned those numbers down. Turned down for what? Because they don't need anybody reaching that threshold of a Galactus. Giant Man only needed 10,000. So let's see how this thing is rolling. with these backers here. So you see the Sentinel had 10,750 backers from the first week, and it already eclipsed its 6,000 required backers to roll into production. Galactus, of course, was 14,000. So that first week with 8,607 was solid, but not quite what they needed. And then by the second week, it was at 13,000 backers. So it was getting there almost. And then by week 3, bam, it's knocked out. We've got the funding. Galactus is going through. But Galactus also had tiers with the Heralds to make it really interesting. And like, all right, we got to keep pushing, keep this thing rolling. So you see, week 4, it was still going strong. Week 5 got another surge. And week 6, it was really rolling. And then the final week, it was just blowing expectations all out the water. So it was doing really strong. And of course, the tail of the Engine of Vengeance did not hit its funding measure at all. And you can see how it really didn't do much of anything. Week 3 or week 5, no gosh, week 3 is when it started to go losing backers. It lost 199, then 118, then 156, 177, and it picked up and got 226. So decisions were made that were not all that comfortable with the collector fan base, and they turned away in droves and it started losing backers, which of course is not something they want to see happen with this kind of a project. So then we move on to Giant Man, and Giant Man also needed 10,000 backers. He had a slow way to go. It was a nervous chewing on my fingernails kind of deal because I wanted this HasLab Giant Man, and I was like, oh man, it's not looking great that first week. A little less than fully funded with 4,587 and 337, 45, 148, getting really tricky. 171, 7086, slow going, especially when you can see how it was comparing to the others where they were in the thousands. Galactus was at 4,000 at this point, crazy numbers. Galactus ended up with 30,811 backers. So Galactus had a lot of things the collectors wanted, Doomhead notwithstanding, and that continued. So there was no real lull in its momentum. Its lowest week was 766 backers, and then its highest outside of week 1 was the 6th week with 4,369 backers. But you see, it had no problem getting all those thresholds and covering and rolling through. In Giant Man, it took that final week where it had its biggest surge, 7,379 backers. It ended with 13,889 backers. So you can see it really just got there, but it managed to get it all the way across. We got Giant Man. Didn't really care about the scroll head, so whatever. And then you'll see, just because I decided to pull up all of this work that Brian did. And let's go on to the G.I. Joe realm and see how they did. And now they don't have as many. They only have 2 so far. We've got our His Tank. That was the first one. Then the Dragonfly. And you can see they're pretty much neck and neck. The His Tank needed 8,000 backers. The Dragonfly needed 10,000. The His Tank was funded week 1. Ditto for the Dragonfly. So victory lap all around for Hasbro with these. Excuse me. All right. So then there we go. We see week 2 pretty solid. People wanted more His Tanks than the Dragonfly, and I think that kind of reflected how it was going as this progressed. So we saw more people backing the His Tank continually until week 5, where it was a slight increase, and then the final week we see that the Dragonfly really pulled up a lot of stronger numbers, and this is week 6, the final week of the His Tank, it really rolled through 8,000 more backers. So the His Tank finished with 26,772 backers. The Dragonfly had 24,764. Now, I also note the Dragonfly was cheaper than the His Tank, which is really cool. Smart decision from Hasbro. And now, all right, so you've been comparing a lot of oranges. What about the Star Wars front? So I'm glad you asked about those. Let's take a look because I think this is really important context. So last year we had the Ghost, and the Ghost was $499. And you see 8,000 target, backers to get it started. It finished with 20,768 backers. Now, price is the exact same as the deluxe Cantina. And I know there was this, wait a second, 399 for a Cantina, and then you want to charge us an extra 100 to get it back or to have the fully deluxe version. That's the same price as a Ghost. And the Ghost did not have this major output of figures. And then you come with 3 to start. Let's see here, roll back through and give you a roll down of all the features that were included with this to start. Just Hera. It was not like there was a whole bunch of other things. We got a half a Chopper. We got the Phantom 2. That was nice. You can see Chopper right there, but it was not a thing of getting all of these extra figures in there. There's half a Chopper. So this was definitely not one of their deals where we're giving you a whole bunch of stuff. To get the rest of the crew, you had to get all these tiers back. And I thought it was kind of interesting that we had to be in and we got this mural shown when they weren't all included with it. So 11,000 gave you Ezra, Kanan was 14, Zeb was a 17. Same deals we're seeing playing out right now. But let's see how these HasLabs have played out in terms of funding and backing. First up for them was the Razor Crest, riding the wave and the fanfare of the Mandalorian. The next was the Ghost. I'm not going to go all the way back just to go with the Jabba sail barge. That was a little bit earlier before the pandemic. So just to keep things fair. So the Razor Crest needed 6,000 backers. It finished with 28,111. Ghost needed 8,000 to get started, of course, 17,000. It wrapped up with 21,768 with that 499 price tag. So that says a ton right there. The people wanted that. They didn't care about the price point. So you can see they're pretty close. The Razor Crest, despite being the current fan loved, fan adored property, was pretty close in terms of just barely outdistancing the Ghost, which hadn't been out in anything. They didn't do what they did with Ahsoka and have the show on, right around the same time. I think we saw glimpses of the Ghost during the run of Ahsoka, but it wasn't like it was featured as much as the Razor Crest was in season 1, and a little bit. No, I guess none of season 2 of Mandalorian. Anyway, 8,000, 6,000. So it cleared right away. Razor Crest kept going. Ghost tailed off just a little bit. You can see the gap is widening from week 2 and 3, then week 4 starting to get narrow. But again, Razor Crest riding all kinds of momentum. But it was that final week where people really surged through and was like, hey, can we get Sabine? Can we get Chopper? And that got done with the 499 price tag. And I think that's important to kind of look at and examine, like, what's going on? Why is this so slow? Because most of the time, actually, I'm pull it up one more time so you can see it. These Star Wars products, these projects, I keep saying products. I mean, they are, but it's more of a project. They're back within week 2 at the absolute latest. And this needed 8,000, same as the Razor Crest. I mean, that needed 6,000. Ghost needed 8,000. And it reached that point by week 1. So week 2, 14 days into the thing, it was done, starting to take all right, let's start eyeing up some of these tiers. I haven't even reached that threshold point for the Cantina, which I think is really interesting and led me to think, well, what's going on in HasLab world? Is all good? Is everything straight? And I came up with a few suggestions that Hasbro, of course, can take as they need to. I didn't come up with a bunch, and reached out to some of my fellow collectors going, what do they need to do to keep people buying, invested, and excited about buying these HasLabs? Because we're seeing the Star Wars one, which has traditionally been a easy funded project, like no issues. Rancor side, rest in peace. But everything else funded right away within the first week was done. And it was just a matter of how many and how quickly will they reach all the tiers. It's not been the case this time. And I think I have a few reasons why. So let's go through ways to improve, maybe. So I think for sure, one thing that Hasbro could do to improve this whole process is, I understand they want to have these big triumphant, big moments of, here you go. Here's our video that we worked on so hard. We're going to show off all these features. And I'm not suggesting they do anything different on that front, but they're working on next year's HasLabs right now. And I think it would help tremendously from a collector perspective because you can't expect collectors to only collect HasLabs. I think one thing that could really improve everything with this process for them is at the start of the year, January, give us a schedule of the upcoming HasLabs. They know when they're releasing them. They have a general time frame. Of course, they can put that little asterisk there and go, release months subject to change, but give us a range of 2 months. Quarter one, I mean, most of the time they're only putting out a HasLab once a quarter. So go quarter one, we've got this. So anywhere from January to March, we're putting out our Transformers. Then, April, May, June, we're going to put out our Star Wars one. And not just give us, the schedule in terms of what brands are coming up when, give us the price point and, give us a high point. And so maybe if it's $4.99, there's an option to go $3.99. Just say $4.99. Go with that. That way, in our heads, we can start wrapping our brains, our wallets around okay, come quarter three, Hasbro's gonna want $500 in taxes for me from this property that I really love, and I'm collecting everything from it. So I'm gonna get it, no questions asked. Little G.I. Joe Classified series. And now I can allocate my funds, my spending properly. So, okay, I can go nuts from January till June. Then I'm going to need to settle down and make sure I've got $500 set aside for this HasLab. And hey, it's only 300. Awesome. Now I've got 200 to spend on some other stuff that I didn't get. Maybe there's another premium pulse outlet sale and I want to take advantage of. But now that I know the schedule, the rollout, and the price, I've got a pretty good idea how I'm going to spend my money, what I'm going to spend it on. I mean, they just did the premium pulse power days sales event when the cantina was going. And I think a lot of people were taking advantage of that sale, especially with seeing all the stuff that was sold out. I think if they were to have something where you knew what was coming when, and again, that when is kind of, it's a little fluid. You can change the month and just give us a vague time frame and a price point. But I think the price point is really important. That way we get an idea. Here's what's coming up. Here's what I can save my money on. All right, so another thing that I think was really great, and you see this all the time. So I'm really curious why we haven't seen Hasbro adopt this, borrow this idea from one of their friendly competitors. Last year, we got our friends at Mattel with their Attorney's Choice, a fan poll going, hey, what? Learn how to cast your vote for our next made to order large scale Masters of the Universe item. They're basically going, we're doing a crowd, or we're doing our version of a HasLab, but we want you all to have a say in this deal. Which one do you want? And I think that's great. That actually puts the power in the customer's hands so they can go, I want this, I want that, I want this. And here's a look at what they did. They gave us options in terms of what we wanted to see. And that's really cool. I mean, it's 5 projects, and I think you got to vote on your first 2. So we got the Horde Tank, we got the Track Attack, we got Snakes Mountain. I mean, it's just lots of cool stuff here. And let me go to our friends here at Toy Habits breaking down everything. We got the Snake Lair, got Horde's Doom Tower, and all kinds of cool stuff. And the Attack Track from the cartoon series, a ton of options for people. The Horde Command Crawler, Fright Zone playset. That's really cool. That's the kind of thing that, putting it out for the fans to vote on really is a great way to go. And I think that's something we could see for HasLab. Hey, you Black Series fans, what do you guys want? Tons of ideas. Give us an X-Wing. Give us this. Give us that. Give us an Echo-based playset. Just put it out to us. And to be fair, and I don't want to shortchange what we are seeing from Hasbro because they are kind of doing a little bit of fan engagement, not quite as much as I want to see from this kind of, I mean, you want the collectors, the customers to support these things, make them feel a little bit more invested in the process early on. So We've seen this with the Giant Man. We've seen this with the His Tank in terms of, hey, what colors do you want this officer on the His Tank? So we get to vote on the packaging, and I think that's a great way to keep people involved in the process. But go the next step. Hey, here's 5 options for the next HasLab. And if you don't want to go that route, go, hey, when you introduce and you roll out that tier, here are the tiers. You know, when they introduce and they roll out their big HasLab, let's say it was Galactus. And instead of here are the tiers, give us an option. We want to vote on which ones. All right, we already got Silver Surfer. We want Nova. Yeah, that's true. We want Airwalker. We want a new Terex built from the ground up. Let us get in on that. Here are a list of possible tier figures. And if you don't want to go that far, what look do you want to see from this perspective character? Just include us into some of the process. I think if there was a tier option or a poll in terms of, hey, which look do you want to see for Goblin Queen, Damien Hellstrom, Mephisto, I think that could have helped tremendously, even if people weren't excited about paying for Robbie Reyes and the Hell Charger. Oh, I can vote for this version of these characters. I think that would have gone a long way. And this is the one that didn't fund for Marvel Legends. Maybe they could include that in there. So a poll, getting that schedule in, I think would be a tremendous boon for them. And another thing that my buddy Grant came up with, and I think makes a lot of sense, is getting the previous year's HasLab to our hands before the next one. So if it's, hey, we've got our next G.I. Joe, we've got an Air Cobra vehicle, let us have our Air G.I. Joe HasLab that we've already backed and funded in hand. So we're like, playing around with it, got it in our hand while we're making that purchase order for the next one. I think that would go a long way too, because it's like, yeah, this is a lot of faith here. I'm putting out more money, and I haven't seen last year's thing. And having to wait a year is a really long time for a figure that should put down that money a long time ago. So it's kind of this deal of having it in hand before you get to the next HasLab, I think would incentivize Hasbro to move quicker to get this in hand to everybody who backed it. Because I mean, most pre-order deals, you get it within 6 months, let's say. And 6 months is really going to a far away estimate with that. It's pushing it way back. Normally it's like, hey, we got it up for a September pre-order. It's here in July. So they've normally gotten stuff to us faster. Not so for the HasLabs. And I think if they had that motivation to get in our hands everybody who backed the previous one, the last year's HasLab before the next one goes up, I think that will work out, provide some goodwill. Oh man, that Dragonfly was amazing. I can't wait to see and have the Rattler in hand. Now I can get it. Awesome. This whole, hopefully, we saw that kind of with the Sentinel and Galactus, where people were, I don't know about this guy. He might have those shaky knees that the Sentinel did, and people were like worried the Galactus was not going to stand because of all the issues with the Sentinel. So actually getting that to us before the next HasLab comes up for pre-order would go a long, long way to keeping things rolling. And then the next one that I just feel is so key and so important is setting up a payment plan. I mean, these things are not cheap. If you only, this is assuming you didn't pay a dime for anything else for Hasbro, but if you back the 4 HasLabs from last year, that's the Dragonfly, that's the Ghost, Giant Man. This was this year, so let's not include that. But the Ghostbusters, PKE, Ghost Trap set, you would have spent $1,275. That's a lot of money for just a few figures. You would have, I guess, one figure and 2 vehicles in a role playing set. That's a lot of money. But if you could spread that out where it's not just getting hit all at once, and I always mention this because I think this is absolutely something that Hasbro needs to do and incorporate with their figures. They do this with everything else, and they're not quite sure why. This is something that is so hard for them to implement. They can make this work any way they need to for it. But I don't understand why they are refusing to go this route of setting up a payment plan. You pay every 4 months. I mean, just something like that. If you're going to take a whole year to get the figure to us, then we should be able to pay a little bit at a time. And of course, to make it so Hasbro's covered to some direction, to some degree, make everybody pay a deposit or down payment. All right, so you want us to spend 500 on the Ghost or 500 on the deluxe cantina setup. All right, well, here's $100. Here's $85, and it's non-refundable. There's absolutely no way you can just go, I changed my mind. Sorry, you're out $85, and there's no way you're getting that back. Sorry about whatever kind of sad sob story you've got. That's done. That's money that's already gone to Hasbro and it's wiped out. You just don't have it any longer. And let me just show you what I'm talking about because I think Sideshow Collectibles does an awesome job with this. So here's the Hot Toys Wolverine from Deadpool and Wolverine. The figure costs $340, basically the price of most HasLabs. So you can see here they got a flexible payment option. That sounds awesome. Tell me more. So layaway interest free from $51 a month. Awesome. But if I'm paying that long and this is supposed to come out when September 2025, the math doesn't add up. You're right. So 6 payments of $51. You got your non-refundable deposit. So you're not getting that back. 34 bucks. And then you got 6 payments of $51 to start next year. So you're not having to put anything outside of that 34 in, and you've got the choice to do this. And you can also change this as you like. So you can do, I just want to pay 2 payments. So 153. There you go. I want to do 4. You got other options. You've got ways to work around however you want to pay for it. And I definitely think Hasbro's a big enough company. The HasLab, the Pulse setup is big enough to include some setup where they can just continue to accept payments at designated times. I mean, Sideshow is able to do that. And even if you want to change it to make it 2 payments or as many as 6 payments, you can still do that. Hasbro should be able to set that up too, where it's just that easy, just that simple to make it work for collectors. Because, read all the time in the comments during HasLab section, people go, oh man, I really wanted to get this thing, but I just can't afford dropping 400, 300 right now. I think that's the way to work around it. And they can incorporate everybody. I think setting up a payment plan allows them the space to have more people buying into these things. And, I wonder if it's just like an interest thing for Hasbro. We're like, all right, here's everything. And we're going to let this interest rise. That's, it's a business tactic, but I think it would be better served for them to have more people. People can go, all right, I can drop 50 or $80 right now, and then I can pay the rest of it come June, July, and August when my HasLab is set to arrive in September. I think that's a better way for them to go, and one that they can kind of utilize and go, all right, guys, here we go. We've got this thing covered. And I just want to check to make sure there wasn't another one that I have not that I did not forget. But I also feel like we don't really need a whole lot of things. I think the HasLab system is pretty cool, but there are a few things that they could do to improve it. So to recap, give us a schedule with the price. You can save the big reveal till whenever it rolls out. Just say Q1, you're going to spend $300 or $350, 400, 500 for this G.I. Joe. Then give us a poll. Let us take part in some part of the process, whether it's the actual HasLab itself. Star Wars Black Series fans would love this option. What tier figures do you want to see included? What looks, what costumes do you want to see in this set? There's nothing, nobody's locked into anything. People get to decide after it's back, or, they can really choose after the fact. So then we've got payment plans, which are so key. Make sure, more for everybody. And then give us the last year's HasLab before you're asking us to pay money for the next one. So those are my choices, my suggestions on how these HasLabs can improve going forward. And we're seeing maybe a slow roll here with this cantina because of some of those issues. I don't see why this isn't funded. I mean, we've seen every Star Wars deal get funded long before this point, and typically within that first weekend. But this is not. So I'm really curious to see what's going on with it. What suggestions would you have to pass on to Hasbro in terms of making the HasLab process an easier one for you? What would make you buy in if you have not been purchasing them in the past? All right, everybody, that's it for this one. Thank you, as always, for watching and tuning in. This episode of Lyle's Figure Files has been filed.